We listed the worst player at every MLB position, and you guys seem to enjoy that video, so let's do the inverse of that today, instead selecting the best of the best. Before we get started, the rules are the same as with the last video, with the requirement that a player has to have played at least a third of the season to be in contention. Though I will say that since most value metrics do put a pretty heavy weight on actual playing time, it's doubtful we'll see a lot of performers in the double digits in games played. I also will require that any player being considered for a position has to have made at least 51% of their appearances there. That doesn't mean they can't have played other positions, but they need to have played at least a majority of their games at that spot. Lastly, as there is a ton of different valuing metrics, today's going to be the first time that I actually use my own valuation stat to compare players, a number I call Total Advanced Value, or TAV. I'll throw the calculation up in a screenshot, but the essential idea is I'm going to take created value in WAR from Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, and then add it to the value created in Baseball Savant, then average it out to get a complete understanding of what a guy's total advanced value is. I of course won't be going strictly off these totals, but I do think it'll be helpful rather than constantly referencing different value site metrics, which is something I've had a tendency to do in the past and can get quite tedious. With that being said, let's hop right into it, starting first with catcher, and an exceptionally tough decision here. You see, both Cal Raleigh and William Contreras could easily be chosen, with Contreras having the superior hitting numbers with a 131 WRC plus and 831 OPS, but Raleigh having an insane defensive year with a Gold Glove, Platinum Glove, and 14 fielding run value. Neither was too shabby in the opposite department either, with Cal leading all major league catchers in home runs with 34, and Contreras being about average with the glove, a fairly impressive feat for a catcher who also hits. Even their TAV was about the same, with Contreras having a slight lead of 4.9 to 4.8. With all that being said, I personally would give the edge to Cal here, for the reason that I personally very much value defensive capabilities from my backstop, and largely see their hitting performance as a bonus, which means that combining the kind of elite defense that Raleigh was capable of last season with his impressive power output, especially in a park like T-Mobile, manages to barely edge out Contreras. I'm very curious what you guys think of this decision as well, so be sure to let me know in the comments. This also seems to be a good time to let you guys know that I am sick while recording this, so if I sound a little funny in the recording, that's the reason. Thank you so much. First base to me is a little bit easier, for a nearly opposite reason, because while there may have been a couple more impressive players from the perspective of an overall performance, being exceptional defensive guys like Bryce Harper or Christian Walker, nobody was able to create the sheer amount of value that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was with his bat, which to me is by far the most valuable quality a first baseman can have. We can even see this in his position-leading TAV of 5.7, which ranked ahead of second place Harper's 5.4. How did he do so exactly? Well, how about by throwing up a 940 OPS built on the back of 30 home runs, 44 doubles, a 323 average, and his highest OPS plus since 2021 at 166, just a point off of the year he finished second in MVP voting. Sure, he was a terrible base runner and fielder, but that kind of hitting production is the type of thing you used to see from a prime Miguel Cabrera, who Guerrero Jr. at his best seems to compare well to at this point. Will he reach the MVP highs that Cabrera did back in the early 2010s? I guess only time will tell, but I will say it is encouraging to see this kind of bounce back from a guy who seemed to be on the decline for the prior two seasons preceding this. Second base has to be one of the biggest slam dunks we'll see today, as Ketel Marte managed to lead second baseman in pretty much every major offensive category, including home runs, RBI, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, WRC+, and every version of WAR there is, including my own total advanced value at an impressive mark of 6.5. For a little reference, 2024 Francisco Lindor came in at 7.1, and he played quite a few more games than him. This just goes to show the kind of quality Ketel had in a season that saw him place third in MVP voting, and win a Silver Slugger, despite playing in only 136 contests. He'll begin 2025 at 31 years old, and dare I say it, if he can somehow manage to keep up the level of production he's had over the past two seasons for around the next 7, which may seem slightly unlikely, but still, he could be looking at one of the more improbable Hall of Fame cases we've seen in recent years, as by that time, pretty much every WAR metric would have him in the 60 range. Regardless, there's no question he was the superior second sacker this past year. We move to shortstop now with our second straight slam dunk, though I will acknowledge the incredible rate of production for this position overall in 2024, as Francisco Lindor, Gunnar Henderson, and Elly De La Cruz all had extremely impressive campaigns, but none of them quite reached the heights that Bobby Witt Jr. did with his 32 home runs, 31 stolen bases, 332, 389, 588 slash, and ridiculous 168 WRC+. As I said before in other videos, this was basically a prime Mike Trout season from a shortstop who was among the best fielders in the game, with a 12 fielding run value to boot. For comparative reasons, that was the same number as Lindor himself. This, unsurprisingly, came out to a ridiculous 9.7 total advanced value, trailing just Aaron Judge league-wide, who we'll get to in a second. That lengthy extension that Kansas City managed to sign him to now looks like one of the best deals in Major League Baseball, and if he can continue to perform like this for the foreseeable future, might go down as one of the best contracts in sports history by the end of it. Next up, we have third base, and probably a lot closer of a finish here than you might expect, even if the answer is still pretty clear. As while Matt Chapman certainly impressed overall with his exceptional defense and typically above average hitting, he still couldn't approach the insane counting and pretty impressive rate stats of Jose Ramirez, who managed to finish just a home run shy of a 40-40 season, with 39 dingers, 41 stolen bases, an 872 OPS, and 39 doubles. All of this came with his typically slightly above average fielding and insane running production, as his base running run value of 6 was in the 97th percentile league-wide. It might seem obvious after I rattled off all those stats, but yes, this did result in positional superiority in terms of advanced value, as his tally of 6.6 ranked solidly ahead of second place Chapman's mark of 5.8. Left field, almost by default, is going to house the worst player we're going to talk about today, as since Jarren Duran and Yordan Alvarez played more games at other positions, they can't be considered here, leaving us with comparatively slim pickings. This reflects in the fact that you could make good arguments for Riley Green, who actually led all left fielders in total advanced value at 4.5, Jurickson Profar, who combined one of the more impressive hitting campaigns of our options here with a penchant for being insanely clutch, and who I'm going to end up going with here in Steven Kwan. Now, why would I pick a guy who's overall slightly less valuable than Green and a slightly worse hitter than Profar? Well, first of all, Kwan managed to tally at least a mark of 4 in FWAR, BWAR, and StatCast value despite playing at least 15 games less than either of those two other players, while truly excelling at pretty much everything you can on the field, as his slash line of 292, 368, 425, with 14 homers and 12 stolen bases to go along with a 6 fielding run value, all pretty much designated him as a solidly above average performer in every metric that matters. Keep an eye on Green going forward though, as this could be his position for many years to come starting next year if he sticks in left field, especially with Duran seemingly being in center going forward. We are back into slam dunk territory now with Aaron Judge in center field, as he finished 2024 as the major league leader in what feels like every major hitting category, including home runs, RBI, walks, on base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, OPS plus, WRC plus, BWAR, FWAR, and total advanced value, with his mark of 11.2 finishing a full 1.5 ahead of second place finisher Witt. Sure, his postseason sucked, but when you combine a 322 average with a near 500 on-base percentage and a slugging percentage north of 700, you not only get arguably the best clean hitting season of the past 20 years, but one of the greatest campaigns in the history of Major League Baseball overall. We have back-to-back slam dunks now, even if this one has since moved on to a different squad, with Juan Soto and his ridiculous 178 OPS plus, top 3 MVP finish, 41 home runs, and 129 walks to just 119 strikeouts. While people certainly give him a lot of flack for his defense, he actually wasn't that bad in that regard this season, with only a -1 fielding run value, helping him to an impressive overall 8.5 total advanced value, largely raised by a ridiculous performance when it came to his StatCast batting run value, as his total of 79 hitting runs placed second in Major League Baseball to only Aaron Judge himself. Naysayers can continue to question him all they want when it comes to how his game will age, and whether or not he'll be a DH in the coming years. But I have to say, if he continues to perform anything like he did in 2024 for the next 10 seasons, then tax on a couple mediocre ones at the end, that contract could not only end up being worth it, but actually be good value for the money. In a manner that's similar to Aaron Judge in the AL, it might be easier to list the things that Shohei Ohtani didn't lead his respective league in 2024, which, as you might expect, easily cements him as the best DH of the season. At the risk of beating a dead horse into glue, I'll list off just a few of his accomplishments during this last campaign: establishing the 50-50 club, setting career highs in runs, hits, doubles, home runs, RBI, stolen bases, batting average, OPS plus, total bases, and becoming the first DH-only player in Major League history to win an MVP, which also netted him his third overall MVP in just his first 7 seasons in the big leagues, with about half of those being partial seasons. For whatever it's worth, he also led the NL in TAV despite playing 0 innings in the field, at a ridiculous total of 9.5. Over the course of the last 4 seasons, Shohei has went from a fascinating sideshow to quite simply one of the best players in Major League Baseball history from a production standpoint. Full stop. We come to the pitchers now, and just like I did in the last video, I'm going to be selecting 3 starters, 2 relievers, and a closer. Why these specific numbers, you may ask? I just like the balance of it. An emphasis on a few of the best hurlers without it feeling like overkill, since I'm not putting together a full team or anything like that. I also will be putting the TAV stuff on hold for this section, as I'm unsure of if I need to fool around a bit with the balance to more accurately represent pitching value. Our first hurler has to be the guy who's probably the most dominant pitcher who threw over 150 innings last year, Terry Skubal, and his Triple Crown winning performance that came out to league bests in wins at 18, ERA at 239, and strikeouts at 228, while also leading the league in winning percentage, ERA plus, and FIP. This was the best season we've seen from a Detroit Tigers pitcher since Justin Verlander. Yet, there might be even more room to grow for Skubal, as last year was the first full season he's thrown at the major league level. With his insane repertoire of a 100-mile-per-hour heater, one of the best changeups in the sport, and a mid-90s slider, giving him the chance to be MLB's preeminent unhittable arm any given start. There's only a few guys who are on no-hitter alert from pitch 1 of every appearance, and he certainly is one of them. In a somewhat bizarre turn of events, we go to another pitcher who managed to win his league's triple crown as well, with an identical 18 wins, 228 strikeouts, and nearly identical 2.38 ERA, only with this campaign coming from a guy in his mid-30s, who hadn't managed to stay healthy in a full season since 2017, in veteran Chris Sale. In what was one of the biggest triumphs of the year, Sale not only managed to put himself back on the map decidedly, winning a Cy Young while leading all of Major League Baseball in strikeouts per 9, home runs per 9, and ERA+, but also managing to finish 7th overall in MVP voting, despite the fact he missed his last couple starts due to injury. Before 2024, it looked like Chris was all but done, putting the finishing touches on a haul of very good career, but with this late career renaissance that he started, who knows, maybe he'll end up as a Hall of Famer after all. Zach Wheeler is our third and final starting pitcher of the year, with what was probably a career-best performance in 2024 in regards to rate stats, posting personal bests in ERA at 2.57, hits per 9 at 6.3, and wins at 16. In most other years, he would have been a frontrunner for the Cy Young Award, but finishing top 2 certainly isn't very shabby either. Fresh off a 3-year, $126 million extension, Wheeler will look to throw up the same numbers he has basically ever since he's arrived in Philly in 2020, which is to say Hall of Fame level results, though due to the fact he wasn't able to throw significant innings before his age 27 season, it does seem unlikely he'll ever make the Hall. Before we move on, I also do want to acknowledge the exceptional play of rookie Paul Skeens, who would certainly be on this list if he had managed to throw even the qualifying number of innings. Moving on to the bullpen, we have 2 of the Cleveland Guardians' bullpen aces, who won't even be the final Guardians pitchers we talk about today, in Hunter Gaddis and Cade Smith. Honestly, it would be hard picking between these two for who was better, since Smith had the edge in strikeouts per 9 at 12.3 and strikeout to walk ratio at a ridiculous 6.06. But Gaddis did have the superior marks in ERA at 1.57, ERA plus at 260, and WHIP with a ridiculous total of 0.76. It's crazy to think that at this time last year, Gaddis, Smith, and lefty Tim Herron were all considered pretty much non-factors for a Guardians team that was the definition of mediocre. But I'm sure it's more than enough consolation that now they're considered the main pieces in one of the best bullpens in Major League Baseball history. Moving on to our final position of the video, we have the main linchpin to that entire Cleveland bullpen, a guy that's put up one of the most dominant starts to a career as a closer since Mariano Rivera, in Emmanuel Clase. This 100-mile-per-hour cutter-throwing maniac managed to post a sub-1 ERA in 2024 at 0.61, while leading the league in games finished at 66, saves at 47, and ERA plus for relievers at a ridiculous 674. Yeah, he was almost 7 times better than an average big league pitcher over the course of his appearances. Sure, he did get embarrassed in the postseason a bit, but this doesn't take away from how historically good he was in the regular season, which is what we're going on. When you look at his numbers through the first 5 years of his big league career of a 1.67 career ERA and 158 saves already being tallied, you have to wonder if this is going to be what it takes to be Major League Baseball's next active Hall of Fame closer. That is, unless somebody like Kenley Jansen or, in an unlikely turn of events, Craig Kimbrell beats him to it. Alright, that was the best player at every MLB position in 2024. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a comment if you disagree with any of the choices, and consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the content. I also would appreciate any recommendations you have for more videos like this. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.